r/AskReddit. Why is your ex an ex? I was in the emergency room with kidney stones. Didn't know it was kidney stones at the time. Just knew I was in the most pain I'd ever been in. She got pissed because you're not paying attention to me. Seriously, I'm in a fucking emergency room hooked up to and forth with painkillers flowing through me. At this point I'm half conscious cause of the morphine. And apparently I'm a piece of shit for not paying attention to her. It came to a head when I asked her to get a nurse because something didn't feel right. They had gave me something I was allergic to and I was starting to have an allergic reaction. She said, "Fine, I'll just be your babysitter." At that point I just told her to go home, that her negativity was making me feel worse. She got all pissy, threw a fit, and left in a rage. Next day I didn't even call her for a ride back home. When I got out of the hospital, I called my aunt and had her drive me home. The moment I got home I started packing my shit. If you have to be the center of attention and can't feel any empathy whatsoever while I'm in the goddamn emergency room, you're a garbage human I don't want anything to do with. We dated for about 6 years and I thought things were going quite well. When we started dating, she thought she was asexual and so sex wasn't really a main focus in our relationship, which wasn't a deal breaker for me, so I rolled with it. About a month or two before we broke up, I could feel some distance being forged between us. At first I chalked it up to her being busy with a new job and family obligations, but more and more she would reference one of her coworkers. I'd be lying if I said it didn't bother me, but I trusted her completely, so I didn't tell her not to talk to him or anything, and she reassured me that there was nothing going on between them. Well, one night we are talking over Messenger and our conversation took a pretty serious turn where she basically admitted to me that she didn't think she was as asexual as she thought she was, and that she didn't find me appealing in that way at all. It devastated me, but I ultimately accepted it. Naturally, I asked if her coworker had any role in her decision to break up, which she was adamant that he didn't. Not even 2 weeks later, I find out that the two of them started dating, which really made me go into a deep depression. I'm happy to say that it's been a little over a year since then, and I've lost over 130 pounds, and I'm finally at a healthy weight for the first time in my adult life. My social life is the best it's ever been. I got my degree and have an excellent new job. At one point I thought my life was over, and in some regards, I was right. My life as I had known it was over, but my new life is so much better. My girlfriend was verbally abusive on a regular basis. She would also get physically abusive when she drank too much. She wasn't really strong enough to hurt me seriously, but when the person you love starts trying to sucker punch you, it is really frustrating. I still miss her a lot. Some days she was wonderful and the sweetest person ever. Others she was bitter, angry, and would do anything to try to get a reaction out of me by insulting me. Started to become my insecure high school self after a while, and had to give up. She dealt with a lot of really horrible abuse in her past, and I didn't want to ever be the next abuser because of my own anger and frustration, so I had to let her go. Still miss her. Still love her. Wish things had been different. This kinda rings true for my ex. She never drank or physically tried to hurt me, but the other stuff. Everything would be fine, and then suddenly she wants to have a discussion. The reason it's in quotes is because it was more of a witch trial than a discussion. Randomly out of the blue she'd bring up some topic and then proceed to grill me on it and ask me a billion questions. The trial would last anywhere from 24 hours to sometimes a week for the bad ones. Until finally I'd say something that was the wrong answer and she's blame me for being whatever it is. One time it was me being sexist, and I'd ask her what did I do that's sexist, and there would be nothing she could point to, but still my tone means that I think women are slaves. Another time she said I'm too much of a Christian fundamentalist, which makes no sense, because I'm a Jew and an atheist. One time I was gonna commit a terrorist attack. All sorts of weird crap. The other thing she'd do is like I'd talk to her on the phone while on the way somewhere, and she'd say something random like, "Oh, I still gotta go home and pack," and I'd say, "Pack? Where are you going?" and she'd say she's going to X country for a week, and she's sure she told me, and she's shocked I'm unaware. And I'd start doubting myself. Except I'd go back and search throughout texts or posts or anything and find zero trace of an international trip. Not to mention I'd surely remember something like that. But she'd insist she told me, and she'd bring up other random things I've forgotten, like sometime I forgot her mom's birthday, small things like that, as evidence that my memory is shit. By the end of it, I wouldn't know what to believe, and was never quite sure if I really did forget or if she's lying. But at the same time I never did find a reason for her to lie, so the whole thing still makes no sense. For the first couple of years these trials and or forgetting instances would happen once every few months. By the end of our relationship this was happening every other week. Finally I just had enough and walked. I still don't know what was causing all of that. Not really an ex but someone I dated for a month or two. Started talking about marriage and having kids after the third or fourth date. Would call me in the middle of the night because she needed help with something that any fully functional adult should be able to do by themselves. That is stuff like lifting a 10 pounds object from the floor and placing it on a counter. Finally broke it off when she told me I'm gonna have to cut any and all ties to one of my best friends because I'm not allowed to talk to other girls now that we're dating. She ended up stalking me for like 6 months. Threatened to kill me in my sleep or walk up to the police and tell them I had raped her. Glad she typed that out in detail so I could just easily screen cap everything in case I ever needed the evidence. Called me at 4 AM multiple times after getting shit faced at a bar, and when I'd switch my phone off, she'd send me 80+ messages that usually evolved from trying to guilt trip me to take her back into borderline psychotic ranting and empty threats. She eventually fucked some old dude, got an STD, and claimed it was my fault because I had forced her to do that by not wanting to be with her. So that was fun while it lasted. He had a sneeze fetish that he obsessed unhealthily over. In my sleep he'd ball up cat hair and try to put it into my nose. I didn't know he was doing this to me until I had a nasty sinus infection and had my sinus flooded out at urgent care. Out came small balls of cat hair. The final straw was cheating on me with a girl who had a bigger nose than me. She was his ex, and he just couldn't get over that nose despite the fact she was literally psychotic. They were perfect for each other. Not my loss, but my mistake ever trying to be tolerant and understanding of him. Makes great material for the biography I'll never write. Edit. I'm new to Reddit and didn't expect this to blow up, haha. For more context, I suffer from narcolepsy with cataplexy. Doing much better now that my insurance actually covers the meds. And he took advantage of the frequent opportunities. I hadn't noticed, but suddenly there was a searing pain, and one of my sinus got very puffy. I had taken a couple days off work and eventually went to urgent care, where they did the flush. It was my second time going back there desperate for help. When the 2 very small balls came out, neither the doc or I knew what the fuck it was. Doc worried it was a mold of sorts until he broke one apart in his hand and could tell it was small black strands of hair. I was confused and it didn't click until on the cab ride home what it was from. I confronted him, which didn't get very far. Wrote about that in another comment. Still had lingering pain, but it wasn't nearly as bad after. I understand this is hard to believe, but at the very least you can confirm the fetish is real with a simple search. Sorry for typos. I suck at texting on my phone. Edit again. It's perfectly okay to laugh. Myself laughing at this is how I coped through it at the time. In the moment I was devastated, totally emotionally wrecked and confused at pretty much every aspect of it. But my friends were great and like, dude, what if you had a child and she sneezed? Nothing would ever be normal. And they helped me laugh through it all. After he got chemotherapy he started to take drugs like heroin and cocaine. He completely changed and I couldn't take it anymore. Another one beat me and sexually abused me because he thought it would be funny to see me cry. That was his answer when I and a friend of mine who I told this confronted him about that. Edit 1. Wow, that post got more attention than I thought it would. To clarify, those were 2 different relationships. I was 17 when I broke up with the guy who got cancer. He survived the chemotherapy, but he is still a heavy drug user. The other one I met when I was 19 years old. Thank God I got away fast enough before he could do anything worse to me. I'll only give my last two to keep it somewhat concise. The woman before my last ex. Well, she had the unfortunate timing of being with me when my father/best friend died unexpectedly when I was in my early 20s. While we had been together about 3 years, I said fuck the world and turned into an alcoholic and moved 2,000 miles away. I actually feel bad for her. 6 months into my self-destructive path, I'm sleeping with this girl on the wrong side of the crazy/hot scale pretty much daily, but I have made it clear it is a FWB situation and I'm not interested in a relationship with her. That didn't work for her, but I jaff, so I keep putting my dick in crazy and drinking. Hindsight is 20/20. So when I start casually dating another woman on the side 6 months later, she, crazy, hot, is pissed and takes it out on my vehicle, and with a bout of stalking. That other woman somehow stuck with me, got me help for my drinking, helped me move past the loss of my father and some moderate PTSD from the military, then became my wife, and mothered my children. I don't know what I did to deserve her, but she literally saved my life and I'll never be able to repay her. I had been considering breaking up with her for a while, because she would lie about little things that made no sense lying about. Never cheated or anything, but would do anything so that she would get more attention from me and other people. I started noticing this when one night she sent me screenshots of her text messages between her and her dad. I had known her dad for a while and the things he was saying in these texts were awful. They were things like "you're worthless, I wish you weren't my daughter." They were things he would never ever say. If there was one thing he showed, was how much he loved his 2 daughters. I was kind of skeptical when she sent me these, because he would never say that stuff, but obviously I couldn't just come out and tell her I didn't believe her cause. If it was true, then I'd be a terrible person. What I thought was happening was I thought she was changing her contact info and texting herself, making it seem like it was her dad who was sending that stuff. Anyways, this happens a few more times in the next few weeks, and I'm just there for her, trying to be a good boyfriend, because there's always a chance it could be true. Well, one weekend she went to a concert with her friend, and after the concert she was drunk, and we were FaceTiming, and she told me that I was still in love with my ex. Immediately I'm like, what are you talking about? Why do you say that? And she responds by telling me that I texted my ex telling her I still love her, and she has the screenshot. I told her to send it to me, and there it was, a screenshot of me telling my ex I love her. The problem was that I never sent that, and it was obvious she texted herself saying that because she was drunk and wasn't able to type that out correctly. She made it realistic though, because she even went out of her way to use the exact contact picture I had for my ex, which was a very unique dumb picture. The moment this happened, I knew the screenshots of her dad weren't real, and I proceeded to say goodnight and break up with her the day she got back. That is why she is my ex. It was my first and my insecurities took over me, like I was that dude that did his own thing and had pretty low self-esteem. She was the super popular girl in school despite being an underclassman, and was actually recruited to do some modeling. She never was straight up with me. We had differences she always held to herself, and it exploded in a single instant. We were kind of a-holes to each other. Better have separated. We tried getting back together, but the bad stuff we did to one another were stuck in my head, and I just had to stop it. She kept hiding and lying to me, like it was way too damn obvious, because she was never able to ever look me in the eye when we had problems. Pretty explosive too, like Ron and Tammy, too explosive. She ended up avoiding seeing me for like a month despite us living literally a block away from each other. We broke up when she texted me she liked another guy instead. Probably just a way out, so I break up with her so she doesn't to me. Knew she was lying, but if she's gotta do it like that, then she's not worth it. Cheated on me, then blamed the guy's death on me. He died in a motorcycle crash at speeds 200+ km/h. He was at her place and I surprised her by showing up unexpectedly, and he left out the back door. Accused me of having incestuous relationship with my mother and sister when I would choose to spend time with them instead of her. Threaten a false rape allegation when I wanted to join the military instead of staying home with her. She also was physically and emotionally abusive. Just an all-around horrible little whore that broke me and gave me long-lasting trust issues. This was almost 12 years ago now, and the effects are still present, even after therapy. She was my first love, I guess. She was the first sexual partner. Looking back at it, I should have listened to her father when he said I should run, and I should have thought it was weird her mother and father was okay with a 16-year-old sleeping in the same bed as their 14-year-old daughter. Boy, was I in love with her. We got a nice place together, same schedule, same hobbies. It was great. We were set to graduate college, and I honestly felt like it was a dream come true. Then, one day, her brother's body was found in his apartment 1,000 miles away up in Seattle. He was a junkie and had been missing for weeks. He overdosed. It was terribly sad. She flew up to Washington to set his affairs in order. I told her I'd go with her. It's my biggest regret that I didn't. She stayed in Washington. I had this huge apartment, our dog, our furniture, our vehicles. I kept trying to reach her, but nothing. By the time cell phones and the internet became prevalent, I tried other ways to find her. I even flew up to Seattle to see if I could locate any trace of her. All I found was her brother's tombstone in a cemetery. I paid my respects and left. She was gone. Never came back. I've tried finding her on social media, but I've come to the conclusion that, as much as I loved her, she had her own path to follow. And I love her just the same. I hope she's still out there and happy. I miss you, sweetheart. I'll never forget you. Because I married her after an arranged marriage set up by our parents and well-meaning assholes from the community. Only met her for 3 hours 3 times. A few weeks in, I discovered she suffered absolute lack of personality of her own and was dependent on her mother to scary degrees. Basically, her entire personality consisted of 50% her mother's opinions and 50% her teachers from religious school. Still, I loved and cared for her and tried to do my best with a shitty situation. But one fine day her mother decided I was not good enough for her precious youngest daughter, and she, the mother of course, decided to divorce me. She kept that knowledge secret from me for several weeks, so I will be there to support her daughter through the hardest parts of the pregnancy and childbirth. And as soon as that was over, it was time to strike hard. Because I found out she wants a divorce by coming to my house on a Sunday morning. We were sleeping at her folks' home after she gave birth to our son, so she can be closer to her mom. And finding the doors unlocked and all my valuables missing, called the police to thinking we'd been robbed, until I got to the bedroom and noted that her clothes were gone but mine were all there. Called the border police to find I can't leave the country since there are 2 open court cases against me, 1 a demand for a divorce and 2 a demand for child support. Fast forward to a few weeks later, I'm in court for the divorce, defending myself from her standing there blatantly accusing me of raping and beating her. I'm a pacifist. The last time I lifted a hand against my fellow man was a fight I had in 9th grade, obviously without evidence. And one last detail, in almost a year of marriage I have said no to anything she wanted only one time, a week before the end. Conclusion: arranged marriage is shit. I should never have married her in the first place. Thanks for reading my rant. Had a few exes before this one, but she was the most serious. Her phone would make texting sounds at odd hours of the night. I asked her about it and she said, "I don't know what you're talking about." She took a shower. I went through her phone. Flip phone. Smartphones were still new, and saw she'd been texting with her the one that got away ex. Didn't break up with her BC I was immature and had never dumped anybody before, so instead we stayed together for another 6 months. She went out of town to visit family. That we weren't doing that together at the 3-year mark might have suggested we weren't doing as well as I might have thought we were. I went to a bar, got drunk, ran into a female friend of mine who was also drunk, and made out with her in front of, unbeknownst to me at the time, one of her co-workers. She dumped me as soon as she came home. If you're reading this and you need to hear as much, trust is everything. If you don't have it, you have nothing. Do you and yours a favor and end that shitty, dead relationship. We were in an open relationship at the time. I was coming to terms at being sexually abused as a preteen and had a very strong aversion to kissing and bodily fluids, particularly spit. So obviously my interest in sex, when he insisted it start with kissing, was at absolute zero. I agreed with him that it wasn't fair to him that he couldn't have sex because of my own hang-ups, and told him he could have sex with whoever he wanted, just to be open and honest with me and not hide it. I didn't want all the dirty details really, I just wanted communication to still be there. He started to sleep around with girls, just like I had given him permission to do, but he would go fuck a girl, then come back and tell me every little detail, like he was trying to make me jealous for doing a thing I told him I was fine with. I didn't understand what he was doing at the time. He began to tell all of our shared friends about how I was a cold bitch and hated everyone else, and said terrible things about everyone at the time. I was too oblivious to notice people acting weird when I asked to see them or hang out. He also began to try to fix my trauma by forcing me to accept him kissing me. He was not a good kisser. All it did was make me gag and nearly vomit on him. We didn't last much longer past then. Looking back, there was a lot of warning signs. He also *PED, a close friend of mine, shamed and isolated her from everyone else, lied constantly about his employment, and stole thousands of dollars from our roommate by lying about how much was owed for bills and never paying them. I was very naive at 18 and 19, and he took advantage of that. Take your pick. She didn't want kids, and I do. She couldn't hold a job or refrain from overdrawing her bank account every month. She was constantly bumming money off of her mother and still couldn't pay rent. In the year that we lived together, she started self-harming again and was generally very depressed. She wouldn't go to a doctor for any of that stuff, but did go when her feet kept hurting after working shifts longer than 4 hours. She would occasionally hit me and often mock me for my appearance, interests, family, and more. The real nail in her coffin is that when I told her I wanted to take a break, she threatened suicide and wouldn't let me leave her side for over 6 hours. Oh, and she stole alcohol from our housemates, cut her hair in the bathroom sink, threw her phone at my head, called me a little bitch thrice in front of my mother, and kicked me in the shin. It's been about a year since that breakup, and I'm in a very happy, relaxed relationship with a guy who actually respects me. I haven't bothered to check on her since she came back to get the last of her stuff out of my house. Life is good. Buried. But if you are reading this way down the thread, welcome to my rant space. We wanted different things in life and had different ideas of what a relationship was supposed to look like. Her red flags for me were to touchy-feely / need physical contact, to shoe / received affection, and the fact that I was starting to have some anxiety episodes, mostly regarding the state of our relationship. My red flags were younger than I am and less mature, many friends stating their disdain for her and her antics, and the fact she had just gotten out of a long-term relationship and had many partners, whereas it was my first relationship in over 5 years and my first actual sexual partner. I realize I'm painting this in a light that reflects well upon me and not on her, but it is my perspective, and it's part of the coping process for me, I guess. This happened pretty recently. Still working on bouncing back. Luckily I have a good group of friends who support me, so it's all in my head from here. Thanks Op for the question, to let me rant about something. Things just got very complicated very quickly. I will try my best to be brief and not reveal too much of my personal life, since I'm on a throwaway. My girlfriend and I were together for just about 7 years when we split up last week. I have known her since the 5th grade, and every moment I spent with her were the best moments of my life so far. We did everything together. We were inseparable. It was literally like something out of a movie. After our first date, we spent 29 days in a row together the summer of our junior year going into our senior year of high school. Things were always great until a very pivotal moment. I will preface this by saying I'm an idiot ass hopeless romantic and that will be my downfall in life. We had both since graduated high school and had been living together happily for about a year when she came to me out of the blue with some news. She said her dad got a job offer out of state that paid really well, and her parents and younger sister were thinking about moving. I said, "I'm very happy for your dad, if he decided to take it." Her response was to ask if I would ever consider moving, and I immediately said no. I didn't understand why we would move with her parents when we already had our own place. She was highly considering moving, and thinking back now, I'm sure she was always planning on it no matter what. I came to a crossroads and had to make a huge decision. Move out of state for the first time and be away from my friends, family, job, my whole life basically. Or I could stay and watch the love of my life pack up and leave forever while I moved back into my parents' basement. Everything I knew would change, but I was so in love with her I couldn't picture my life without her for even a minute. I decided that after a lot of thought and stress that I would move. After we moved I became very depressed. I hated it there. I didn't have a good job anymore. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any friends and my family wasn't there. Her family was though, and we spent basically every weekend at their house, and it was becoming too much for me to handle. We didn't have our own life anymore. It was now a life elsewhere with her parents. I was dealing with a lot at the time and I wasn't handling it properly. I tried to just stick it out for a while and learn to adjust to my new life. We lived there for about 2 years when I got a phone call from my dad one Saturday. I couldn't answer right away, but he tried calling back immediately after, so I thought it was urgent and picked up. He told me over the phone that my younger brother had just killed himself. My whole world shattered. My brother and I were super close before I moved, and when I did leave we drifted apart. He was experimenting a lot with drugs and wasn't taking care of himself. He stopped calling me and wouldn't answer the phone after a while. I still to this day hold a lot of blame over myself for not being there. I felt like I abandoned him when I moved, and things would be different now if I stayed. When he died, I decided to move back home to spend time with my family. My girlfriend was about finished with getting her associate's degree. Both of us had been working full time, and she was getting her school finished at the same time, so it was taking a while for her, even though she was busting ass. Not enough hours in the day. We found out that if she moved with me right away, something like 9 credits wouldn't transfer, so we agreed that she should stay and finish school and move later on. We would only be apart for about 5 months. Easy. For some reason, every time I asked about her school, it seemed like her finishing date would get pushed back further and further. Fast forward to this month, and it had already been a year with no end in sight. I was always worried about being long distance, but I was willing to do anything to make it work so I could be with her because I saw a real future with her. We talked about marriage and having kids and everything together. As time went on, I felt like I had to fight harder and harder for her attention. She was so busy with work, school, family, friends, working out and so on, that I was just no longer a part of her daily life. We used to Skype, set aside time to have phone calls, send each other pictures, and have fun with each other. All that just kind of faded after a while. I tried to talk to her about it and tell her that being long distance was hard for me at this crucial point in my life and I just needed more from her. Her only response was, "I don't know what you want me to do." I ultimately ended up telling her that we shouldn't be together anymore because she had her new life totally established with a great job, which was becoming her career, her own apartment, her family nearby, and she was already doing school. I just wasn't a priority anymore. It was so hard to let her go, but I knew that she would end up living out a better life where she is now than she ever would with me. It is absolutely destroying me, and I still believe that I will never have anything like I did with her, and I'm not sure if I will ever be able to get over it. I feel like everything good in my life I used to have is now gone, and I just don't know who I even am anymore. I was too immature to be ready for the seriousness of a real adult relationship. We got together my first year of university and we are together for almost 5 years. I never seemed to grow out of that university person who wanted to hang out with his friends and just enjoy life. She was much more mature and ready. We ended up buying a house and moving in together. 6 months later it was over. I just wasn't ready to be a grown up, and that's what she needed and deserved. She is now married and has moved to a major city a few provinces over. She started her own business that was just a hobby when we were together. As far as I know, she's doing well, and I hope her days are filled with nothing but happiness. She was a great person and deserved the man I'm now, not the boy I was when we were together. Thankfully I've grown up and can give my current S/O